Hi, I'm Shane. Today we'll be demonstrating our 96-inch dozer blade. A dozer blade is a perfect attachment for building ditches and roads, maintaining roads, and leveling out topsoil. A very important factor when considering dozer blades is the shape of the mold board. You can see here that we have a mold board that is a full 25 inches to the peak here, and it's got a nice gentle curve that matches the curve of the cutting edge. So you always want to use a cutting edge on a dozer blade that's curved because they cut cleaner and they cut more efficiently. You want that material that's being cut to roll. And so we have a nice smooth surface here. It's got an optimum angle of cutting down at the ground level, and it's going to take that material and roll it nicely, and that makes for a more efficient cut. That means that you can cut more with a smaller skid steer. The cutting edges are a 1/2 inch thick and 6 inches wide, and they're made of medium carbon steel. The medium carbon steel gives the best combination of strength and wearability. So a higher carbon content will give you increased hardness, which will make it wear longer. But you don't want to use too high of a carbon content because the steel can actually become a little bit brittle. So medium carbon is the most common material used in cutting edges. The shape of the cutting edge is important because the curve, again, allows the material to roll after it's been cut, and that makes cutting it more efficient. It takes less horsepower to do the cutting. I wanted to point out that the end pieces of the cutting edge, we actually have 3 sections here. The end pieces are 1 foot long. The reason we use a 3-piece cutting edge is because the corners of the cutting edge on a dozer blade are the parts that wear the quickest, specifically the corner of the cutting edge, especially when you're cutting at an angle. Because this cutting edge is symmetrical, you can rotate or reverse the cutting edge and get a fresh edge to work with, or a fresh corner. After these 2 corners are worn, you can actually swap left and right and get, again, sharper corners again, if that's important to what you're doing. But the main point is that the reversible cutting edges, you can get a lot of life out of one side of the cutting edge and then flip it over and basically double your lifespan. Okay, so we finished kind of our first shot at leveling out this pile here, and I was surprised at the high level of clay that was in this dirt. I thought it was going to be mostly black dirt. It ends up being a high percentage of clay, so that it really made it a lot harder to pull apart. The pile had been sitting there for over a year. It was very wet. So we got it mostly flattened out here, and we let it dry out over the weekend. Now you can still work with it a little bit, but it's really lumpy, the parts on top here that haven't been crushed. The cylinders we're using are 3-inch bore cylinders, 8-inch stroke for angling, and we have a very large 1.5-inch rod. There's 2 angling cylinders, 1 on each side. And for tilting or oscillation, we have the 3-inch bore cylinder with a 4-inch stroke on top. So we installed the optional wing kit on this dozer to show you what you can do in terms of moving larger volumes of dirt. The wing kits themselves are made out of 3/8-inch plate steel with 1/4-inch reinforcement plates near the bottom. It basically allows you to push a larger volume of dirt at one time without it sneaking around the outsides of the blade. We have a rib made up of 3/4-inch plate steel. It runs right down the middle of the main frame, and that is the backbone of the main frame that keeps the top and bottom pivot pins held in space correctly and gives that strength, that rigidity that you need to make the whole system work well. Along with the 1/4-inch mold board and channel, we're also using 1/4-inch gussets top and bottom. We have a lot more gussets on the bottom that connect the channel to the frog. That's where you see most of your stresses, is right down low. We're also using 3/8-inch plate to cap each end of the mold board, and we have 1/2-inch plate here where the cylinders mount. So you'll notice that the brackets that they pin to are wide. They're solid welded. That spreads out the stress over larger areas, so you're less apt to have cracking or bending or that kind of thing. The skid shoes on the bottom are 1/2-inch thick. I have them in an up position today because I'm not going to really be using them, but they're adjustable. They're bolted into slotted holes, and if you want to do cutting, or if you're in conditions where you need a little more support at the cutting edge to prevent it from diving, you can lower those skid shoes a little bit to give you more support, and that'll resist, again, the digging or diving that might happen on the front side. Weight is something that comes up often with dozer blades. naturally people think that something really heavy has to be really strong, but that isn't always the case. You can build a structure that is using closed structural steel like tubing, or a closed structure made out of channel that is lighter and stronger than something that might be really thick. So what that means for a dozer blade is you want to have a dozer blade that is easy to control, easy to handle in the field. And when you're cutting a lot of dirt, a deep cut with a big machine like this that has tracks, there's a tremendous downforce on the front of the dozer blade because of the angle of the cutting edge. And the heavier you make a dozer blade, the more it's going to want to nosedive or cut. And it's hard to control that from the cab quickly if you're running a straight dozer blade. So running a lighter weight dozer blade actually gives you more control and easier handling from the cab. Okay, so the wheel kit is very easy to use. It's very simple, but you have to use it differently than you would with just using the blade alone. So the way it works is when you have the wheel kit on and you want to use that support of the front wheels, you have to have tension on this link right here, this floating link. That means that you roll out your blade until the blade actually comes off the ground. You'll see the cutting edge come off the ground. That means you have tension, weight on the front axles. Then you're in the right working position. From there, you can just roll the mounting plate back a little bit to get into a cutting position. That will lower the dozer blade. So it's actually the opposite of what you might do without the wheel kit, where you roll forward to cut and roll back to cut less. This is the opposite. You're rolling forward to cut less and rolling back to cut more. Okay, so now we've installed the wheel kit. This is an option for our dozer blade. It was very easy to install. We used a hoist and we hooked it right into the lift eye here. You pull it into place and you install 2 pins in the rear and then 1 pin here in the linkage. And that's all there is to it. It took us less than 5 minutes. The frame itself is made up of a 4-inch square tube. It's about 6 feet long. This is massive and very rigid, very heavy. It has a walking arm at the front to help equalize any bumps. The caster wheels are solid urethane. They're about 18-inch diameter, so they roll really easy over terrain. This moves the axles about 3 feet in front of the cutting edge, and they're about 7 feet in front of the front axle of the skid steer loader itself. So you can tell now that the wheelbase has gotten much longer, basically doubled. But not only that, we have a support here on the front, or in front of the cutting edge of the dozer blade. So that's going to give us a lot more control when we're cutting, especially in tough materials like today here, we're cutting clay. Okay, so this is my first try at cutting a ditch with the dozer blade. I wasn't sure what the conditions were going to be like here. I knew that there was a lot of clay here, and there is. So it cut better than I thought. You can see that the soil rolls nicely off the cutting edge and off the moldboard. This obviously was not tilled. There's a lot of vegetation in here. I wasn't sure how that was going to affect it, but I ended up taking 3.5 passes, not trying to overdo it, and we ended up with roughly a 6-inch ditch. So it's definitely possible. The best advice I can give you when using a dozer blade, especially on a skid steer loader, is to take your time. Don't drive too fast. Get a feel for how much you can push or cut with the skid steer loader, and take multiple passes if you have to. If you get too carried away and start cutting really hard, you'll start diving. You'll see along here I have a few places where I dove and then came back out, and you got to back up and kind of recut it. Okay, so we've created a second ditch here with 3.5 passes, the same number of passes we did on the other ditch. And the first thing you'll notice is that the cutting is a lot smoother. You're not seeing that porpoising or that diving effect. The wheels are preventing that from happening. So it's a smoother, straighter cut, which is really nice. The second thing that you'll notice is that I was able to drive a little bit faster because you can control your cut a little bit better. You're not nose diving like we did on the other side. So you can slice and cut that dirt just a little bit faster. Now, I'm pretty rusty at this. I haven't run it for many years, so I made several mistakes making this ditch, but we did end up with roughly the same ditch in slightly less time. It's about roughly a 6-inch ditch. We were cutting the same material. It's kind of a hard packed clay. So the results, though, I think are very different. You can see that the wheels really give you a lot cleaner finish. Another place where the wheels come in really handy is when we do backfilling or leveling, kind of like a finish grade, where you're not cutting, where you don't have the blade oscillated or angled very much. Hope you've enjoyed this video that we did with the Dozer blade. Be sure to check back as we make more videos just like this one. And as always, be sure to check us out on the web or give us a call if you got any questions.